Today on Locked On Red Wings, can Jake Walman prove that 2023 wasn't a fluke?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the daily JAWWJ News Radio podcast. Well, Scotty's a host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today, guys, offseason continues pretty slow. We're going to continue our player previews for the 2024 season. And the big headliner in this episode is Jake Walman. He ended up playing 63 games with the Detroit Red Wings this last season and was like lights out. He was fantastic alongside Moritz Seider. And then we're also going to talk about Alex Lyon, the second of the two goalies the Detroit Red Wings picked up this offseason and where he might fit in the grand scheme, as well as David Perron, another year older. I think he's going to be, age 35 season. Well, I'll double check that before we get to his conversation. But can his production remain? He hasn't fallen off yet. He's been incredibly consistent his entire career. Can he do it again? That's going to be the target of conversation with him. But Scotty, first, how you doing? Happy Monday.
Yeah, man. I'm doing all right. A pretty solid weekend. I'd say. How about you?
Pretty good. Just got back from a camping trip, in fact, with a couple of my friends, and got to hand out some, groomsmen invites.
Oh, fun!
Yeah, so
getting to be that time, baby.
It's getting to be that time. Still over a year away, but we're getting out ahead of it with that.
But also getting to be that time.
Also getting to be that time. So yeah, let's get into the conversation. Jake Walman. He had 63 games played this past year with the Detroit Red Wings, and he was absolutely fantastic. 18 points in that span, 9 goals, 9 assists. But it's really, the impact you had away from the puck that really stands out, and how he gelled with, Calder Trophy winning Moritz Seider in his sophomore season. That really stood out. I mean, Jake Walman, when he was acquired from St. Louis last season at the trade deadline, I remember Jay Fresh tweeted out a card and said, this is a guy who's like a micro analytic freak. Like, he played a lot of sheltered minutes with St. Louis, never really got an opportunity to show everyone what he has. And with Detroit, he could get that opportunity. And this last year, after coming back off of, I think he had a surgery that he had to recover from, if I'm recalling correctly. Mm-hmm. So I don't remember every single detail about everything. I have a really bad memory to begin with. But he came back and started off on the bottom pair and quickly began climbing the ranks until he was paired up with Moritz Seider on his left side. And I mean, it speaks for itself. The entire fan base loves Jake Walman, and he earned himself a 3-year extension before the season was even over.
Yeah, I mean, I think we did something along these lines, right when the season ended. But if we were to rank players that had the most successful season, or I guess we did letter grades, right? We did letter grades on everybody on the roster for this season, and he was the highest. Mm-hmm. He was I think he was the only bona fide A+ that we gave out, and that's because he had as far as expectations going into the year, if that's your barometer, I mean, there's no one even close. He comfortably blew everybody out of the water. If you're talking about best and biggest storylines from this previous season, Jake Walman is number one. He is the biggest success story in the 2022-2023 season, rather. And it was just awesome to watch, just as a Wings fan, just seeing a player that no one really anticipated would be in the future plans for the team or anything like that, just play his way into that conversation and end up at the top pair. But we talked about it with Seider last week. He was vital to Moritz Seider. Seider's production, we'll talk about Walman's production. He had a solid season. He had 18 points, 9 goals, 9 assists, 9 goals from a defenseman will gladly take. He has the ability to drive the offense. He's sound defensively. We love what he brings for sure. And I think a large part of another part, I guess I'll say, of what people like about him so much is that he plays perfectly alongside the franchise defenseman, right? Mm-hmm. So he does everything that this team needs. he is the perfect fit over there on the left side at the top. And I have a trivia question for you.
Okay.
The Detroit Red Wings only had 4 players who ended the season with a positive plus minus. Do you
4?
want to take do you want to take a stab at who those 4 may be?
Well, obviously Walman. If we're talking about Walman's going to be the guy.
Correct.
Shoot. Dylan
Well, I
Larkin?
guess technically they ended the season with 3 because Hronek is up here and he obviously did not end the season with the team. So that I'll give you Hronek. So there's 2 left.
Okay. Dylan Larkin?
No. Dylan Larkin
he played a lot of minutes.
I don't even know where Larkin is. Dylan Larkin has a -7.
Yeah. Oh, this is tough, man.
It is tough.
I'm trying to think. Pew Suter,
not a bad pull, -3. Very close to that 0.
Andrew Kopp
+2.
Okay, so one more. Philip Zadina. Oh no.
So I think Zadina's. No, it's not Zadina.
That one I was just pulling that one out of my hat. I had no idea. Just give it to me. I don't know.
The last one is, I can't believe that of all the ones you didn't get, is Michael Rasmussen with a +2.
The dog.
So my point being is that, and I feel like we say plus minus a lot, and every single time we're like, but this stat sucks, and like that's probably not fair to
argument.
like cite it as often as we do, but like talk about how stupid it is. My point is, when saying the stat is dumb, Jake Walman had the best plus minus on this hockey team last season. He had a +10. It was number 1. That does not make Jake Walman the best player on the team, I guess, is my point when comparing and contrasting players with plus minus. But it is worth noting, and I don't think that it's for nothing, that he had the best. I mean, and when you're talking about, again, like if you move Hronek away because he didn't end the season on the team, the second best plus minus on this entire team was Kopp and Rasmussen, who had a +2. Walman had a +10, right? So like he was, and once that switch with Seider was made, that's obviously when we saw a huge uptick in production, not only from just the production of the Detroit Red Wings, but from Seider as well. I think he is the perfect fit for where this team is at right now to play alongside of the top pair.
Well, and allow me to compound that. Like, because yes, plus minus, it's nice in this instance because it kind of supports our argument, right? But allow me to compound it with
whatever
stuff
supports the narrative.
Exactly. Allow me to compound it with stuff that we have a little bit more weight to. So Moritz Seider and Jake Walman played 640 minutes at 5-on-5 this season. They are the pair that played the most together for Jake Walman's sake, that is. Jake Walman played with Moritz Seider more than he played with anyone else at 5-on-5. And they had an expected goals for percentage of 51.34% at 5-on-5. Just to remind you guys, expected goals for percentage is basically the quality shot attempts for versus against. And so if you're over 50%, that means your team is generating more quality shot attempts for than against when that pair is on the ice. As a pair, they had a 51.34 percentage. As a player on his own, Jake Walman, in 63 games played at 5-on-5, had an expected goals for percentage of 52.31. So on his own and paired with Moritz Seider, he was a positive asset on the ice. And relative, so on the ice versus off the ice at 5-on-5, Jake Walman was like a 7.37 cumulative across the season, and I think a 0.3 given every 60 minutes. So basically what all that means, all those numbers I just threw out, you guys, means that when Jake Walman is on the ice, the team produces more quality shots for than faces. That means he's good defensively, which we already knew, and he's good offensively as well, which we already knew. He's helped produce his offense, and he helps shut down the other team's offense. That's basically what everything that I just read you mean. Now, in terms of predicting his future, Scotty, because we haven't even talked about his 2024. We've only talked about his 2023.
Right.
Can he sustain this level, or is this kind of a flash in the pan?
I think his play style is not really a flash in the pan style. I do think that there might be some fluctuation on like the pure goal scoring. Like that's kind of hard to predict from a defenseman, right? Especially when he's not the defenseman that's going to have his puck on the stick the most out of the pairing, right? Like that might be something to argue about. Like he ended last season with 9 goals. That was, again, tied with Hronek for the most goals scored by a defenseman on the team last year.
In
And like,
63 games.
right. And Hronek was in 60s, to be fair to him. So like same kind of premise. But like, yes, like he played significant, obviously much less than Seider and Sherrod, etc. And he had, again, tied for the most goals on the team. So like, is it my question is more, or maybe it's more of a rhetorical question, but like, what I have a hard time predicting going forward is what is the consistent goal scoring number going to be year in and year out? Not as much like, oh, is this going to be a good fit long term, or is he going to have those good underlying numbers that you just laid out? I think he's a perfect fit for Seider. I have zero worries about next season us having a conversation around like, oh, like it, is Walman like a bad fit? Like, look, like he, the whatever top line or the offense when he's on the ice isn't producing anymore. Like, I don't really have those worries. The only question I have is just, is like 10 goals, like really, I mean, in only 63 games, to your point too, like over a course of a full season, is 10 goals really like a 10 to 12 goals really a sustainable thing from him?
I think so. I think so. I think without a doubt, because, and let me give you this, his expected goals above replacement at even strength offense this year was significantly higher than his actual result, his actual goals above replacement, which would indicate that given how his play style was feeding, he should have had more points than he did. He only ended up with, like you said, 18, 9 and 9. He is a 92 percentile defenseman, Scotty, this past year in 63 games played.
Yeah.
Like, that's how good he is. Here's his player card. I know we got to wrap up this conversation and move on to our break, but there's a lot to break down with Jake Walman. I mean, the fact that he was a 74 percentile offense and 95 percentile defense, and the fact that that offensive rank is measured off his actual, not his expected. Like, look at that expected goals above replacement. It is above 9, yet his actual is like 2.
Right.
That would indicate that as good as he was defensively, offensively, he should have produced even more results given the how good he was playing. So I would think that not only can he replicate this, I think he can improve on it. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, Scotty, I don't think 15 points is out of the realm of realism for Jake Walman this season.
15 goals or
15
points?
goals. Sorry.
Yeah.
15 goals. And then let's just say like 20 assists. That 35 points, it's not asking for a lot. And when it's just a lot of goals I'm asking for. But I think 15 goals out of Jake Walman this season is completely in the realm of realism.
I don't disagree with you.
Yep. Scott, do you have any final thoughts on Jake Walman before we move on to this quick break and then Alex Lyon?
No, he's just an absolute dog, and I love him.
We do love Jake Walman. But first, I got to talk to you guys today about FanDuel. Football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on the Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. Scotty, who are you picking to win the Super Bowl?
Goodness. The Detroit Lions.
That a boy. That was the correct answer to say. This is our year. You can bet your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're talking about Jake Walman. We're going to move on now and talk about Alex Lyon, one of the goalies that Steve Yzerman picked up in the offseason. Signed to a 2-year deal. Alex Lyon had a great regular season with the Florida Panthers, kind of fell apart in the playoffs. Sergei Bobrovsky took over and just got red hot, carried them all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. I think if you ask me off rip, Scotty, where Alex Lyon's going to be playing this season, I probably would say in Grand Rapids. He'll probably be the starter in Grand Rapids. But the main question I have then is, can he push for the backup gig in Detroit? It's going to be Ville Husso and James Reimer, who going into camp are going to be the presumed goaltenders at the NHL level. But Alex Lyon has proven that he can play really well at the NHL level, even though it was just one season. He was damn good in that season for them and really helped them make the playoffs. Can he do that and prove to the Detroit Red Wings, like, hey, I deserve a look on your roster as well?
Yeah, I think this is a situation where if everything goes right for the Detroit Red Wings this year, in a perfect world, if everything goes the way that the Wings want it to go this season, then in a year from now, no one will ever remember the fact that Alex Lyon was a Red Wing because his hockey reference page will not have him playing a single game this season at the NHL level. And that's not like a slight at him. That's the situation that the Wings are currently in. I think that he is the safety valve. Now, I'm very glad that he's here. And I'm very glad that we have a safety valve because we haven't in years. If you look at just the last 2 seasons, especially, right? And you start talking about the goaltender situation and how quickly it has thinned out in each of the last 2 years. We were begging for some sort of safety valve option, not somebody who was going to come in and obviously be like a Vezina winner or anything, but just someone to come in and put bubble gum on a leaky pipe, like just someone to stop the scoring for a night, maybe. You know what I mean? Like just someone who had the ability to be even an average NHL goaltender. And that's something that, again, like the last 2 seasons, this organization has desperately needed. So I fully expect him to get a few starts, probably somewhere between like 2 to 7 starts, at a minimum, just because like injuries happen and whatnot. But I mean, his role, I mean, back to your, one of your original questions there, like, I don't think that going into camp, anyone is going to be of the mindset that, like, if this dude balls out, maybe he's the backup goalie on opening night. I just think it's Reimer, and I think that that's kind of it.
It would have to be like Reimer really or Husso like really, poops the bed, and Alex Lyon balls out for that, and to have to be like, okay, well, this is how it has to be.
Right. I think that this is an in-season safety valve option that if one of those two really struggles, right, like we have a Ned situation again, or if there's a serious injury to one of them, then now we have a guy who we are a lot more comfortable throwing out there if he's going to end up starting, 20 games than anybody we've had over the last 2 seasons to do the same thing. I think he'll play a majority of his games in Grand Rapids. I think he'll start the season in Grand Rapids, and I think it'll be kind of an on-call basis. But I'm very glad the signing happened. I'm very glad he's here, and it's something that this organization like very badly needed. So like good on him and good on the front office.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think Alex Lyon is a safety net for the Detroit Red Wings because they got caught last season, with their pants down. They didn't have anyone to support Husso. And obviously, they didn't think Nedeljkovic. They might have thought Nedeljkovic wasn't the answer, but they didn't think he would be like as bad as he was. And then they picked up Magnus Hellberg out of desperation, and he was not any better. This was a move to shore up and make sure that didn't happen again. And now I kind of started off talking about Alex Lyon, and he really did help the Florida Panthers make the playoffs, but he did only play 15 games this season. He had a 914 save percentage in 15 games this last season with the Florida Panthers, but the bulk of those games, with the exception of 6 of them, so the second half of the 15 games he played, games 7 through 15, was at the end of the season when, their goaltending situation kind of fell apart. They had to call Alex Lyon up to finish it off, and he was great in that span. And it wasn't a exaggeration to say that he helped seal them a playoff spot.
Yeah.
They barely did, but he did help seal them. Now, in the playoffs, he fell apart, but his 914 save percentage in those 15 games played was good enough for 11th in the league at goals saved above expected. I'm sorry, 17th in the league. He was 17th in the league at goals saved above expected at 11.02. That's where the 11 came from. His goals saved above expected was 11.02 for 17th in the league. But again, preface that sample size has a lot to do with that. Given more games, he probably drops. But when the chips were down and the team's back was against the wall and they had to make the playoffs, he showed up. In the playoffs, not so much. Same gripe can be said about Philly Husso. That's why I'm not getting too excited about the signing of Alex Lyon. He had a great stint at the end of last season to help the Florida Panthers make the playoffs. But overall, do I think he is going to really make a push and be a threat for the backup role? No. I think he's going to be the starter in Grand Rapids, and he'll be the third string goalie. And you know what? Maybe he will provide a little bit of heat on the heels of Reimer and Husso to motivate them to continue to play better. But I think I stand by with where he is on the depth chart on Cap Friendly. I think the number one goalie in Grand Rapids is what he is. Because if you look at his career statistics, this past season was a little bit of an anomaly for him. 15 games played with the Florida Panthers is the most games he's ever played with any team he's been with. He's played with the Philadelphia Flyers for 4 seasons. He had 11, 2, 3, 6 games played, and then 2 games with the Carolina Hurricanes. And, his save percentage has been largely in the high 800s for those short stints with each team. So, the history, I think, speaks more than getting hot at the right time with the Florida Panthers last year. So that's why overall, I think Alex Lyon is going to be the number one goalie in Grand Rapids, which is, again, no problem with that because he provides a very important safety net feature if injuries or production, or I guess play, becomes an issue for the 2 goalies in the NHL.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about David Perron. I love me some David Perron. So stay tuned to Lockdown Red Wings. Segment 3, Lockdown Red Wings podcast. Let's talk about David Perron, Scotty, and the bulk of his conversation. I love David Perron. I loved the signing when they made it, and I loved him last year. I know he went on a pretty big goal drought for a while there. It was pretty snake bitten, but he did finish with the second best points on the team. Was it 50-something points? 56 points with the Detroit Red Wings. Second best on the team. Not saying a whole lot. Let's be honest. Your second best forward only had 56 points, but he did play all 82 games played at age 34 years old, 35. That was his age 35 season. 24 goals, 32 assists. He was great in the corners. Great guy for protecting the puck. He's super good at protecting the puck. Hard to knock him off of it. And his production has been largely consistent throughout his entire career. I mean, you look since 2017 until now, and so we're talking late 20s into his now mid 30s. It's been 46 points, 66 points, 46 points, 60 points, 58, 57, 56. He is a lock for 45 or more points every single year, which is phenomenal for a guy who's probably going to end up playing more middle six this year at the Detroit Red Wings, but can play top line minutes and will be a threat on the power play. Scotty, David Perron, the main question I have is, will his production continue as he continues in his mid-30s?
I mean, we haven't seen any reason to think that it won't. You know what I mean? That's kind of one of those until we are proven otherwise, I think we just kind of write him in for 45 plus. And now, does that mean that he's going to get, 55 to 60 every year? No, but I've seen nothing from Perron over the last 2 years that would lead me to believe that if he plays a full season, he's just going to fall off a cliff and not be productive anymore. And you already kind of highlighted some of his strengths. Puck control is obviously a big one. And I think that he's a really good example. I had a similar comment with Fabry, but I think that Perron is really a good example of the growth that this team has seen over the last couple of years, right? When he first came in, it was, we talked about it when the signing happened, he's going to be a top 6 forward. He's going to be really productive on the power play. And he's probably going to be on the first unit there. And all of that came true. And he played all 82 games and he's awesome. So he's done he had 56 points, the second most points on the team. He's done nothing wrong. And yet this year we're having a conversation about him being a middle 6 forward. And
yeah,
I think that is just a testament more to how much growth this team continues to see and how much better the expectations are, not only for this team, but just the pure talent on the roster is. I think this is a weird season when compared to last year, I guess, where if David Perron finishes second on the team in points again, something went terribly wrong. But last year, he finished second on the team in points, and we considered last year a successful season. So I think that he's a great baseline or kind of barometer of how many players on this team are going to have better seasons than David Perron, because last year it was only Dylan Larkin. And at least in the forward core, we can't really use points for the defenseman, but like you get the point I'm trying to articulate. Like I think that is really the biggest thing here. So yeah, I don't expect his production to like fluster at all. I very much expect him to get like second line minutes pretty consistently. Maybe if there's certain opponents or sets that call for him to move lower, I guess maybe. But like for the most part, I assume he's going to be penciled in there on the second line and be really productive and be another kind of just like steady, consistent forward on this young up and coming team that's trying to get over the hump.
Yeah, I think David Perron, and going into the last year of his contract, I think that there's going to be a conversation about, trade deadline. Obviously, it's going to depend where the Red Wings are at, because if they're genuinely trying to make that next step, then you would hope that playoffs are in the picture and you don't have to trade away an asset like David Perron. But I think David Perron is like the perfect veteran for this young team. Everyone loves David Perron. They call him a loudmouth. They say he talks too much. Maybe he's a little bit of a crap starter. We don't actually know, but they love him in the locker room. Everyone knows that. He obviously still produces on the ice. And if he's great in the locker room and he can help guide these young players, like that alone is just worth having him around. And the fact that he goes out there and he puts up 55 points, and like if his production slides a little bit and it slides back to the mid 40s, I can live with that because he's going to be 35, turning 36 this season. Mm-hmm. So it's going to fall off at some point, but he's been so consistent his entire career that I don't expect that to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if it does, but I don't expect it to happen because David Perron played all 82 games last season. And on top of that, his expected goals for percentage, Scotty, was 49.84%. And I like to say that if you're above 50, that's good because, again, that means that your goals for or your expected quality shots for are better than your quality shots against if it's above 50. If it's below, then there's a slightly more. And he was at 49.84, but he also played all 82 games. No one above him on that list played all 82 games. The most amount of games a player played that is above him on that list, which, by the way, comes in 7th on the team because the team was pretty abysmal. So being a hair below 50% is still pretty good for the Red Wings, is Jake Walman, who we were talking about in segment 1, who had 63 games played. So he played 20 more games than Jake Walman and just barely came in a hair under 50%. So I know I'm kind of pulling at straws there. That's not the right analogy. Not pulling at straws. What's the word I'm trying to look?
I don't even know what you're trying to say.
No, there's like a straw man argument, I guess.
Oh, straw man fell. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm kind of positively nitpicking. I'm drawing a complete blank, and I'm just ruining my point. But like, I know that
right now you're trying to fit your narrative, buddy.
Yeah, no, I am, and that's literally what I'm doing. But for him to be 49.84, having played all 82 games with the Detroit Red Wings on a team that overall, as a team, their expected goals for percentage was well below 50%. Right. Means that he was a positive asset out there. That's the narrative I'm trying to assert. Sure. And I firmly believe
true too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just couldn't remember the analogy. Somebody in the comments will tell me what I was trying to say. Like, not pulling it.
No clue.
Like, I'm trying to grasping at straws. That's
what you said.
No, I'll say it said picking at straws, and that's not right.
Oh, okay. I thought you said grasping at straws, and then you were like, oh, I'm trying to say something else.
No, I know it seems as if I'm grasping at straws with that statistic. But like I said, with the team's overall expected goals for percentage being below 50%, him being at 7th with 49.84, being a hair below that 50%, means that he was still better than the majority of his team. And then, of course, you just look at his point totals. He was a power play wizard, again, with the puck possession, super good at protecting that puck, getting into the corner. He's a wizard with that power play shot. I love David Perron and everything he brings. And so overall, my prediction for David Perron in the 2024 season is I would expect similar production. Wouldn't be surprised if it slid a little bit due to age, but overall, I would expect more of the same with David Perron, and I think that's perfect. I think he'll probably slide in on the second line. Wouldn't be surprised if he falls under the third line. I also wouldn't be surprised if he falls up into the top line. So he'll be somewhere in that top 9 regardless.
100%.
So, Scotty, any final thoughts? I know I rambled there because I couldn't figure out what I was trying to say, but we got there.
No, I don't think so, man. I think that, I think Perron's pretty fascinating. I'm just really excited for Jake Walman. Like I'm really excited to see. Like this is, we talked about the production uptick last year and how good he looked last year. Last year he played like the first third of the season. He was either like not playing at all or was playing on the bottom pair. Like this is like right now he's penciled in to play 82 games as a top pairing defenseman. Like I'm really, really excited about what kind of production Jake Walman can give over a full year at the, leading the team in or second on the team, probably in ice time next to Moritz Seider. Like that's going to be a really, really fun pair. I'm
an
really
exciting time to be alive, man. Like, and again, to go back to the David Perron thing, his expected goals for per 60 minutes was 0.52, and his expected goals for percentage in general was 5.25. So if you take away like the overall numbers and you look at like game by game per 60 minutes, like he was a positive asset on the ice. So narrative pushed.
Love some narrative ball, baby.
There we go. And just to, again, recircle back to what you were just talking about with Walman, I'm pumped for him. I'm so pumped.
So pumped.
Him and those eyebrows. Whew.
Oh, yeah.
He and Fabry, man. Those are some caterpillars up there.
He better hit, for real. He better hit the gritty this season. That's all I'm going to say.
I think the gritty is going to be out of style by then. We'll have a new dance.
I don't care. He should still hit the gritty.
What if he goes old school and like whips and nays on the ice?
It's crazy.
This is when I was a kid.
The Nene's old school. Don't ever do that again. Stop. Please stop.
Oh, all right. We're gonna end it there. Just what a mess of a third segment this was, huh? It was a lot of fun though. Any final thoughts, man?
We ball.
We'll be back with a new episode on Wednesday. So stay tuned. I'm still on vacation time, clearly. My mind's still on vacation.
All right, buddy.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. It's always fun, Scotty. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.